I'm sitting here writing and was led to this one particular book, and I wanted to share a thought from about something that happened yesterday. So this book has 410 pages right now, um, and it's in flux. I wanted to show you a little bit about how the sausage is made. Um, this is laid out. You can see there's content. If you look at the page numbers, you can see that some of these are really short. It's just sort of in flux. What you can't see is where all this came from, how long it's taken, of course, the experiences that are connected to how these things came to be. I don't mean writing. I think a lot of people think that I would need to write a book like anyone else would, and that's imagined for most people because they've never written any books. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's like painting a picture. You wouldn't know what it's like until you do it. So if you saw a map through time of where every single piece of this came from, you'd see there are actually several prototype books from which much of this came out of, which some of those were quite well written. Thinking one in particular was about 500 pages written. And some chunks came out of that, and I broke apart another thing to make this, and I'll be writing and I just add a chapter or whatever. The point is that the elements of this book have been in the works for at least 4 years, bare minimum, the direct elements, and then all of those are just pieces, links in a chain that goes back even further. And this book might not even see the light of day. In fact, in its current iteration, the skeleton is, this is not what it will be called, I don't think. Who knows if it will stay this way. Okay, so why am I going into this? So yesterday I had a conversation with a friend. It was maybe a 5-10 minute conversation, and what we were going over was this idea of making a life plan. And I've mentioned that in several videos. I've laid it out a little bit. And I was able to share in 5 to 10 minutes enough content in such a way that I think that this person is going to start living that way. And I foresee that it's going to have tremendous positive effects in their lives. What's interesting to me is even if this book never comes to be at all, now that value has been handed off to one person. And of course, some of you have seen the videos I made on the same topic. So the ripples are much wider than just one person already. But from that choke point, it's not easy to see everything that went into it. And sometimes it takes an immense sacrifice to bring forth something that in your life, a sacrifice in your life to bring forth something that anyone who's going to partake of the benefit of that will never, ever understand what it costs. And that's not only okay, it's a really good thing to do things like that. So, if greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his friends, how much more valuable is it to do something that takes a greater sacrifice than it is to do something that takes a lesser sacrifice? And so often we only measure value based on the impact, the outcome side of the equation. But that's not the way that God does it. That's an important component of measuring value, but sometimes it's more valuable to do what has a greater cost, even if the benefit's the same, when the greater cost enables something to be done that could not otherwise be done, if that makes sense. So it's not so much a measurement of the inputs versus the outputs all the time, as much as it's a measurement of the necessity of the outputs and the lack of alternative ways to produce them. And this is one of the hidden powers of love, because it's not always about um, being worth it, is not always a question of inputs versus outputs. Frequently, it's a question of, can the inputs exist in any other way? And that should ring some bells, because there was a very important situation where the person making the sacrifice said, isn't there any other way? And the father said, no, there's not any other way for this to happen. And the son said, okay, then I'll do it. So um, try to see those opportunities in your life where you have the blessing of a mountain of work for what seems like a very small output, when there is no other way to produce that output. Don't confine yourself to the things, to the calculation of value and the direct consequences. Look at secondary and tertiary downstream effects. And in this case, if the only outcome of all of this is that conversation that I had yesterday, that's great. Because I couldn't have done that without all the work I put into this book and everything this came from. So what are things like that in your own life? Do you have any examples? Or maybe, because this is still, it's a weird thing to write a book. So help me out here, and in the comments, just share some of your own experiences from life, or maybe something you can imagine that fits this mold, and will help propagate this idea a little bit.